Hey, Dr. Tim, I've got the 3 names from CDPHE off of the email, and I was just going to cross them over when I see them, unless you had some other people you wanted me to cross over.
All my family and friends will be joining in as well. No, I don't. I don't know what the total list is from the state side. Amara, I don't know if Director Ryan will be coming via someone else.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'll just keep an eye out. If you see a name that you recognize, just give me a holler.
Okay, on the attendees side there.
That's correct.
Okay.
Hey, Doc, this is the sheriff. I didn't get an email out to you yesterday, but if you have a public health complaint, just get with the individual chiefs, and we have a policy with the DA set up that we'll go talk to them, warn them, and then issue them, not unless it's egregious, and then we'll give them a ticket.
Okay, great. I'll spend my weekend doing that.
Sounds good to me. I think the educational part's pretty well covered, but I could be wrong.
Hey, Beth, the only challenge would be if someone joins via phone. I don't know anyone's phone number, so. Is the 720 number there? Hey, Bob, I heard we're having to hire 3 attorneys just to fill your shoes.
I don't know if Bob's feeling the same way, but my will to live has been knocked down a number of pegs after 3 hours of straight interviews.
You guys,
Attorneys will do that to you.
yeah. Well, it'll take 3 of them to carry me out.
Thank God we finally have a lighthearted conversation to have after all those interviews. This is the the dessert, I guess.
It's why I keep the Vuelta on in the background all day long. I just run the tape over and over.
So are we expecting some guests coming over for this thing? Is that right?
Yeah, the state. I don't know specifically who from the state. I know potentially Mara, who's the chief of staff for Director Ryan. Other than that, I don't know specifically if Director Ryan will be jumping on the call or.
I just texted someone with CDPHE to ask if they think they have the right link.
That could be the issue.
Aislinn, their organizer.
I clicked on their link that they sent.
Well, maybe they had the right link. We're using our standard BOCC link. Is that correct, Beth?
It's not unusual this late in a day for them to be a little late. They have generally back-to-back meetings all day long.
I know you've been having a lot of meetings with them, Tim. That's been your experience as they've come into these a little late.
Yeah, a couple minutes. Plus it's Friday afternoon, so
Right.
things tend to build up through the week.
Should we assume that since they gave us a 25-minute window, that their time is pretty limited because of that back-to-back nature of their responsibilities right now?
It's a safe assumption. Anyone joining by phone? Are you with the state?
I Googled those numbers. I know who they are.
Okay.
So.
I think I'm going to text Jill.
Okay, so Michelle Child says she's on and can hear and see us, but doesn't think we can hear and see her, so she must be sitting over in the attendees. There we go.
Elle.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hey, Elle, how are you?
Good. How's everybody?
Good, thanks.
Good. Okay, there we are. Sorry, I think I was stuck on the other side. I don't know how this works.
Thanks. You go by Michelle or Elle?
I go by L.
Okay. I'm Randy Wheelock. I'm a county commissioner, and George Marlin and Sean Wood are both county commissioners as well. And you know Tim Ryan, I think, or you should, our public health director.
I do. Thank you, Commissioner.
One other thing, are we expecting anyone else from your side coming over?
We are. Mara is supposed to be joining us. I know she's wrapping up on another phone call, but I think we can probably go ahead and get started.
I see Mara there now. She's there.
Oh, is she? Okay, great.
So she should pop up any second here.
Okay.
There we go.
Hi, I'm so sorry, folks. I did not mean to I was on the phone with Grand County and ended up going a little bit late. My apologies.
Hi, Amara.
I'm doing okay. How are you folks doing today?
Good.
Good. Do we want to do quick introductions?
Sure. My name is Randy Wheelock. I'm chairman of the county commission. And we've got, we can, what doesn't each person here name somebody else? George, take it away.
George Marlin, Clear Creek County Commissioner. Sean?
Sean Wood, Clear Creek Commissioner from Evergreen. Tim?
Dr. Ryan, I'm the Public Health Director for Clear Creek County. Bob, I'll go by age.
Bob Leffler, I'm the county attorney. Keith?
Yeah, Keith Montag, County Manager. And I'm not sure we need to go much beyond that. We've got Sheriff Albers. He's on. We've got Crystal Branch. She's our public health nurse. Brian Monsu is our EMS director. Alyssa Dinsberg is recovery coordinator. Suzanne Boscia is our emergency preparedness coordinator. I don't know if we need to do
Well,
much
thank
more.
you so much for all those introductions. I do really appreciate it. My name is Mara Brosi-Witchar. I'm Chief of Staff of CDPHE, if I haven't had the pleasure of meeting with you. And I am going to keep my video off because I have a 2-year-old on my lap right now who we're multitasking with daycare and such. So he's watching some fireman videos while we have this call. So just really appreciate it, everybody. The joys of COVID and the multitasking that we've got going on. I wanted an opportunity to come and talk to Clear Creek really about what's going on in terms of disease transmission and what that looks like moving forward in terms of Clear Creek's position on the dial. We obviously know that disease transmission is not just happening in Clear Creek, that this is statewide right now. And what does that look like? With that, how can we really start to figure out ways to help disease transmission and mitigation efforts? I know that there's been a lot of different mitigation strategies that Clear Creek has put in place and different efforts that have happened. I think right now I'm really recommending that Clear Creek moves to level yellow on the dial, if not level orange. We know that is 2 moves and that seems abrupt, but with where disease transmission is and incidence rates rising, we really can see the writing on the wall that we'll be having this conversation again next week about moving you to the next level. I know that was a lot of information to download and to digest. So happy to sort of start that conversation and to start the questions and how I can help.
Hey, this is Sean. I think that makes perfect sense. I guess one thing that confuses me is this is a statewide issue and everybody's kind of in the same boat. Why doesn't the state manage it at their level and just move everyone to orange?
So that's a great question, and definitely appreciate that. We are moving many counties to orange. So we are doing that. We don't find that it's appropriate though for, let's take, for example, Hinsdale County that has 1 case to be moving to orange necessarily. And so this is, and really the governor is very much a local controlled governor and leadership, and wants to make sure that we are doing this as much as possible on the local level.
Mm-hmm. So we would presume that the entire Denver area and everyone to the west of us and anyone near us is also going into that same area. Is that correct?
You would be correct, sir. Because
we act as a major conduit through which all of those people travel. And so it's pretty hard for us to impact, the behavior of other people who travel through us, especially when they're still being recommended and not restricted from all of that travel. And I'm not suggesting that we do necessarily, but I'm saying that there's little we can do to control the outcome of that. And that's why I think what Sean brought up, that holistic approach, not only that, but a top-down approach that does help us understand that we're all on the same page is extremely helpful. Do you have recommendations about what the measures we can take are?
It's a really great question, and I really appreciate that. You know, we've been starting to really talk about sort of a regional model as we're seeing the spread sort of move regionality. And so, yes, you're completely correct. All of the counties that are around you are also moving. There's no doubt about that. And so, and we can on the dial breakdown, we've this week alone, we will have moved 12 counties on the dial and expect about 14 to move next week. So there's a lot of movement happening on the dial, and with that support. Other measures that we're really looking at, and this is coming from different ideas that other LPHAs have had, would be instituting a curfew. We saw the city of Pueblo do it. Denver and Adams will be also instituting a curfew. I believe Denver's takes place tonight. Summit County is also looking at doing a curfew as well. I have not seen their final order, but that is moving and grooving as well. The other conversation that's happened quite a bit is reducing indoor recreation. And so in level orange, it's a little bit different. There is no indoor recreation, but people have taken advantage of it in perfect honesty and said, oh, we're an indoor event, or, oh, this is happening as a under gyms and things like that. Indoor recreation poses many different challenges and threats in terms of much less mask compliance, heavy breathing, people often in much closer proximity to each other. So there have been talks of restricting, sort of doing a 2-week pause on all sorts of club level, high school level, adult and youth recreation happening both at Summit County level as well as Adams County and Denver. I think that that's a really positive way to get ahead of disease mitigation, to do this sort of 2-week restart. Let's all just pause for 2 weeks. Nobody forfeits a game, nobody loses a game. And that way we can really reassess in those 2 weeks to see if that had an effect.
Thanks, Mar. I really appreciate these sort of suggestions. And Clear Creek County has been sort of the head of the game as far as I'm concerned on this.
Yeah.
Our numbers have been quite low. They've had a mask mandate months and months long before the state ever did, or anyone around us, and have really taken a lot of initiative. And for the most part, we have great compliance. Where we're seeing our cases come are from individuals who work in other counties, who come home, and or who live in other counties, who come to work in Clear Creek, and a lot of around travel. We're not seeing a lot of community spread as much as many other counties are. It's sort of a family because they traveled and came back, and now 4 of them are COVID positive sort of stuff. But we'll continue to do any mitigation we can, and what might work for our community we'll definitely consider in moving forward. I think moving to orange makes complete sense. We seem to be yo-yoing between 5 cases or 10 or 21 as we had last week. This week, knock on wood, although we have one more day, we're only at 5 cases. But we'll see what Halloween brings. And I agree on the 2-week pause. I think, one element is also where people are congregating without masks. And one of the ones that bubble very close to the top is bars, and or where people can congregate in great number without a mask and have hours on end together. Whereas in a restaurant, they're not sitting there for 4 hours. The way they might be in a bar. So any of those sorts of things where we might take a pause for a 2-week, maybe 3-week period, try to get a handle on these numbers, at least from Clear Creek's perspective.
So I think next, oh, excuse me, sir.
No, back to what you mentioned at the beginning, and I'm kind of a little bit confused because the conversation up until now has all been around the states put this framework in place, and there are clear trigger points when you move from one place to another or back to the other place. And the way that you described it, Mara, sounded like it was voluntary. Is the move from 1 to 2 something that's going to happen, whether, independent of what we decide locally, and then the 2 to or 1 to 3 is something that you're suggesting that we could volunteer for? I mean, could you clear up a little bit about who's responsible for what and what we're being asked to do?
Definitely, and I appreciate that clarification. So, right now you are in level blue, and we would recommend we move you to level orange. Right now, we are going to be moving you to level yellow, regardless of the decision to continue moving forward. But we really like to work with counties and have these conversations and look at your incidence level, and to make sure that when the state says we are moving you to level orange, that the county commissioners and individuals on this call have had the chance to ask me lots of questions for us to have a really collaborative conversation about moving in that direction. I think the writing is on the wall, that the numbers aren't going to be changing. And so I would highly recommend we move you to level orange, and the state would make that move. The state is ready to move you to level yellow right now. But we wanted to have this conversation because we do lead with partnership and collaboration. If we leave the call and you're not comfortable moving to level orange at this moment, we would then set up another call next week to then move you to level orange at that time. Again, I think it's most appropriate for us to move you to level orange right now, so that way we can avoid at all costs a stay-at-home order in the future.
George, do you have a question?
Yeah, just following up on that. If we voluntarily go to orange instead of going to yellow, and I'm being slow because I'm trying to go from 1, 2, 3 to blue, yellow,
I know
orange.
I'm struggling with it too, George.
But if we skip to orange, what does it look like on our way back to blue, assuming that we do turn this thing around?
It's a great question. So we ask that you keep your lower level metrics for 2 weeks. And so once you get to level orange, once you've been in your level yellow, see, I just did it myself, level yellow metrics for 2 weeks, then all it is a simple notification letter from Tim to say that we are going to be moving you to level yellow. And then after 2 weeks in level yellow, after 2 weeks in level blue with your metrics, we then move you from level yellow to level blue. It is a much more streamlined, quick process than the move to a more restrictive level. A more restrictive level obviously requires buy-in from your constituents and support, and we want to make sure that your county feels like we are making appropriate moves to get ahead of this disease, that we are doing mitigation efforts that help you as opposed to hinder you. We think that the dial really is a great tool for that. But in opening back up, it is really pretty straightforward as to what levels you need to get to what can be open at that appropriate level. The dial has been often viewed as sort of a hammer or a punishment. And that is not what we view the dial as. And instead, we really view the dial as a tool to help mitigate where you are in your disease transmission. So when you get those, level yellow metrics, we want to open you to that level, right? Because that's where you are in your disease transmission metrics. And that's really where the tool is helpful.
So I have a question for you that's because it helps us understand also. I'm thinking of the counties that surround us. When we talk about a regional approach, I mean, when each of us thinks of the region, each of us coincidentally is at the center of the region, and we draw a circle that's it's all the counties that we touch, and then you ask them and it's a different circle. And pretty soon you keep drawing all these circles trying to figure it out, and you end up with the whole state again. But in any case, we realize that you have places that are isolated that are not seeing the transmission at this time. However, let's just think about our circle for a minute. So of the counties that border us, Park, Jefferson, Gilpin, Grand, and Summit, should we presume that all of those counties will be going on the same path that we're on right now?
They're on that trajectory, yes. Each county is a little more slightly nuanced. For instance, you have Gilpin County that's in Protect Our Neighbor, so they've got a little bit of different situation at this exact moment in terms of the time, but Summit and Jefferson County will both be level 3 today as of 4 p.m. The Grand and Park, we are in current conversations about mitigation efforts and putting those in place and moving them on the dial as well. So you're not an outlier. Your region is having quite a bit of movement on the dial.
And so if we were at level yellow, we would be more of an outlier actually. Is that correct? If we stayed at
Yes,
yellow?
I think you would be.
Than if we went to orange, because then we'd be surrounded by orange and we'd be less restrictive. Is that correct?
Especially for Jefferson and Summit, yes, which is where so much of your population, goes and works, right? But lives in Clear Creek.
So in general, I'm supportive of going to orange. We need to get this thing under control. I don't see cause for us to wait another week, knowing that that week will include data from Halloween, or decisions that were made in Halloween, behaviors that were taken in Halloween. The concept of the 2-week pause is something I really like. I asked Tim Ryan this question a couple weeks ago. Like, how long would it take us if we all magically decided to behave the way that we should be to get this thing under control? And the number's 2 weeks, right? My concern is that if we're doing 15 counties this week, 15 counties next week, I just don't think that we really have. We're not actually creating a 2-week pause. We're creating a series of 2-week pauses that are not coordinated in a way that they'd be effective. Do you share that concern?
I don't discount that concern. I think that there are definitely values in a regionality approach to any sort of pause. And so with that, I would encourage Tim to really have conversations with his counterparts in Summit and Jefferson County and see what sort of efforts they might be considering in terms of stricter mitigation on top of level orange.
That conversation came up earlier today, and when I had a conversation with Tim, and I think a good starting point, whatever the decision is we make right here or immediately thereafter, is important. But what else is important is if we're not going to have statewide guidance that actually create those strategies for us, then I think it's imperative that a public health director is certainly everybody surrounding us, when we're the center of the universe, that Tim gets together with the public health directors of the surrounding counties to craft a cohesive plan to help keep us all safe. I note that you mentioned Summit and Jefferson, so I'm looking at the I-70 corridor and that transmission of people as being just that population. It's a different model than you see in Park and Gilpin, and I presume that's and somewhat different than Grand. That's the difference.
Mara, when did CDPHE start these dial adjustment conversations with Jeffco?
So we started those conversations, I think, about 2 weeks ago. And those conversations first, that Jefferson County really took it upon themselves to put in a public health order first. And then after that, we are moving them on the dial effective Monday at 5 p.m.
What about Summit?
Summit, same sort of thing. We had conversations probably actually starting 3 weeks ago with their Board of County Commissioners. They decided to put in their own more restrictive public health orders first. And then we moved them, we had a call with them on Wednesday for implementation at 5 p.m. tonight.
Okay.
So go ahead, Randy.
No, that's all right, George.
So it seems like if we saw our neighbors try some sort of more narrow local public health orders weeks ago, and we didn't see that really impact the data, I think it's safe to assume for Clear Creek County that we might be able to just skip past trying to duplicate what Summit County and Jefferson County did. We can learn their lesson and just move with them. Does anybody think I'm off base there?
One thing that Mara said that I think is important that I wanted to bring back up is she talked about this concept of buy-in from our constituents. And just like CDPHE right now is seeking buy-in from this board, and I would point out, I didn't hear anything about this until earlier today. So it's not like we've been talking about this for 2 or 3 weeks. I would like the opportunity to do that process, to go through that process and seek buy-in from our constituents and find out what measures they may be willing to voluntarily do. Or if they're like, go ahead, you know, we have no issues, go for orange, we're all behind you. I think just from the appropriate process that our other two neighbors have taken, I think that, and I'm not saying we should make it 2 or 3 weeks, but I don't feel the urgency to make a snap decision based on talking about this for 10 minutes.
I do like to think about that stuff. I'd point out that they went through that 3-week process, and this is where they are, and that we're sandwiched between them. I'm not, yeah.
Sean, I share that concern. I think in an ideal world, we would have had more time to talk specifically about the decision of are we skipping yellow. I do feel like we've been having lots of conversations. We have a regular process for feedback with our business community and our constituents. And so I'm not sure that I support like waiting for us to receive more feedback. But one concern I have that's related is, when would we implement this thing? What I don't want to do is at 3:57 tell all the businesses that they're at 25% by 4:15.
It's a really valid concern. So what I would say is that you will be, we would like to give time for that implementation to happen. Obviously, the change between yellow and blue to yellow or blue to orange is different. And so I would recommend that if we do yellow today, that it would be an implementation of 5 p.m. on Monday. If you are going to move to orange, I would be an implementation of 5 p.m. on Wednesday, since you have to that is a much different drastic number. If we decide to move to yellow today, that it'll be then implemented at 5 o'clock on Monday with a follow-up call for us to be scheduled on Friday, which would then have an orange change to 5 p.m. the following Monday.
Yeah,
We're not going to be able to, go ahead, Tim.
As the public health director, I think the quickest path for us to get back to blue is to go to orange directly. Hanging out in yellow for a couple of weeks and hoping for the best, I don't think is going to get us to blue, in all honesty, based on my expertise. I think going to orange and having a more restrictive 2 to 3 weeks of time and getting that will get us the quickest road to blue, in my opinion. I'm all for buy-in, but right now I don't think the disease spread is quite rampant throughout our county and throughout the state, and having an economics versus health conversation in terms of when we might go to one dial or another, this isn't the time for that. It's time to go to a more restrictive one to get our numbers down so that we can continue that economic conversation 2 weeks from now and 3 weeks from now, and open things back up as best we can. I'm not suggesting we shut everything down, but trying to wade in the shallow water for 2 weeks, hoping that we don't go deeper. It doesn't bear out based on our neighbors. To Randy's point, Jefferson County has shown that that isn't working. In Summit County, the same sort of thing. So I think the sooner we sort of swallow the pill and realize that it's what is going to save us in terms of our numbers, I think we should do that.
So a quick follow-on question, and I guess it's for you, Mara. If you guys were talking to Jeffco and Summit about this 2 or 3 weeks ago, why didn't you talk to us about it?
Yeah, that was mine too.
I can chime in here just a little bit. So I had reached out to Dr. Ryan a couple of weeks ago, and it looked like things were probably contained and going to stabilize, but we really did see those increases, in the last 2 weeks. And Dr. Ryan and I did visit last week, and I know that, there were likely conversations last Friday among your board. So this conversation has been in progress for, I would say at this point, almost 3 weeks, if not more. The county is currently 32 days sort of out of bounds of those metrics. So there have been other conversations, and I apologize if we didn't loop you in sooner. Maybe we should have done that, but
yeah,
yeah,
they didn't happen. They didn't happen at this board level. I mean, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, I think the only thing that happened at this board level is that Tim has been consistent in telling us this was coming, and accurately so, as it's turned out. And he's been giving us heads up on it, and I think it's the buy-in I'm most interested in now is that which can guide us to control the things that we're seeing on the epi charts and what I continue to see on the daily case rates, the daily onset rates, in terms of reporting date and onset date. And it's just inexorably, you can just see the thing still accelerating right now. The one thing I would say, I'd had the same question, why couldn't we have a little more time to understand that this was coming down the pike, and that if you were talking to the neighbors on it, we're kind of the waist of the hourglass between Summit and Jefferson counties. And I will be honest, it feels to me like I've been saying this for a long time. It's an inevitable consequence to land here. And if it would have seemed that it would have been a lot smarter to talk to Clear Creek while you were talking to Jefferson and Summit at the same time, at the same level you were talking to them, regardless of what it looked like was happening here, to at least more of a heads up. That said, I don't know what the advantage is. When I just heard you say, if you went to yellow, we'd want that yellow implemented on Monday, with the expectation that we'd have another conversation on Monday or Tuesday, and possibly then move to orange by the following Monday. Well, by that following Monday, we wouldn't have even seen the impacts from having gone to yellow on the previous Monday, because it takes at least 2 weeks to play out. So it seems like it's just sort of like walking up the stairs one at a time instead of going ahead and jumping up to the next 2 steps up, because that's what you've got to do, is up the game. We will not receive any feedback from our action on Monday that would tell us not to go to orange on the following Monday, because it wouldn't have even evolved at a biological level yet. Am I correct? Then it seems like
Yes.
putting the brakes all the way to the floor instead of halfway to the floor would be a wiser thing at this moment.
I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the comments about Jeffco and Summit. For the record, Jeffco and Summit's numbers are a much different picture than Clear Creek's. And so the conversation, in perfect honesty, was accelerated to some degree with Jeffco and Summit due to their much different numbers than the picture that Clear Creek represents. Dr. Ryan has been a really valued partner of CDPHE's and has had many different conversations, and you have really wonderful leadership in him. And so I appreciate that. And this is about the time that we do have the call with the Board of County Commissioners for any sort of dial movement in terms of, hey, we've got to start this, because we don't. And that's one of the reasons why we talk about a different implementation date. We want to make sure that you're able to communicate this to the residents of Clear Creek County. That is only fair, and we want to make sure that we can be your partners in that as well.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I think as we are collectively realizing a regional approach is more suitable, I think one element of that regional approach would be to start talking to counties who share transportation corridors with counties who have serious problems, for example, at the same time. And I know, like, I'm not saying that to try to express discontent, but try to be productive about how we can move forward. And that said, though, I will state that I think I'm more surprised to find that we're not pursuing a statewide approach than I am to find that the state is recommending Clear Creek go to orange. As I thought about the policy tools that were on the table and the policy tools that made sense, I'm not surprised in the slightest that we're being recommended to move to orange. And I'm very surprised that we're not yet talking about statewide solutions.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I'm not surprised at the recommendation that we go to orange, or the prediction that if we only go to yellow, we'll be to orange in another week after that anyway. It sounds like our real choice is orange on Wednesday or orange a week from Monday. That's what I'm hearing. And so those are the choices we're being faced with right now. And there's little difference between those two. You could please send back to the state my personal disappointment with the lack of leadership from the very top on this level.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, one side of the coin is this so-called local control. The other side is passing the buck and not being willing to make a tough decision and forcing us to do it.
And it's not like just, and I think I can speak for Sean and Randy. It's not that we're not ready to make a decision. It's that we don't know that our decision will affect our outcomes.
Right.
Yeah. Takes a few rogue counties who don't want to do it. And
Right. And it takes a little bit of and all it's going to take is a little bit of a state effort to make sure that people are still passing through to render our decisions almost moot, except that we will have at least had the defense of a little different behavior that's mandated in the county.
So getting back to the conversation about what we're talking about, whether we should go to orange, as we talk about this, I think it just makes more sense to me as we talk through it. Another thing is the seasonality of our business cycles. You know, right now is a time that businesses are not expecting to be busy, although we've had a little bit better of a shoulder season than normal. And as we move into December, that's going to change, and the potential for revenue loss is going to be a lot higher.
Well, thank you for those comments. And both Randy and Sean, and all of the Clear Creek County Commissioners, I really appreciate your comments about asking for statewide of action. I will definitely share those comments with Director Ryan, as well as with the governor's team and the governor as well. We understand that there's an enormous amount of pressure being put on by locals, and we want to be here in support of you, and I appreciate those comments, and we'll make sure that they are heard at the highest levels. So thank you for those.
Thanks. And I have a question for you, which might help inform not only our path forward and understanding of what to expect, but also help us understand, you know, what's happening today and this next week, which is there still a hope that the ski areas will be open in the governor's office?
I think that there's not just a hope in the governor's office that they'll be open, but really statewide. I think that you know, skiing is not just important to our economy. It's important to Coloradoans' mental health. And so we are still moving forward with approving ski plans. The ski plans are approved first by your LPHA and then sent over to CDPHE for sort of final checkoff. We've been really impressed with our partnership for those counties that allows us to move the restrictions for restaurants and bar areas. The après ski will be per the level on the dial, but the actual act of skiing is fairly safe in terms of COVID lands. You know, you've got that instant 6 foot space in between you with your skis, and it's outdoors. And so we want to make sure that we're trying to move that industry along.
Oh, and I see questions about similar to that about our local ski resorts. We'll learn more later on all of that.
Mara, I'm sort of goal-oriented person, and what do we want to get out of this particular meeting, and when would you like a response from Clear Creek County, the commissioners, myself, in terms of our movement to yellow, orange, or whatever color of the rainbow we end up at?
Well, thank you so much for that. We would like to move you to level orange, and that's what I'm hearing from this call. So what I would like to do for my next steps would be to send a letter signifying that Clear Creek will be moving on the dial to level orange, implemented on Wednesday at 5 p.m.
just from a procedural perspective, we're in a work session right now where we don't have the opportunity to take any action. But following this is going to be an action session. And my own personal request is that we have a time where we can open it up to the business community to give them a chance to speak into this, rather than make a decision without even having a chance for any public comment or any input from them.
Okay, I appreciate that, sir. So then we will do a letter signifying that you will be moving to yellow unless things have changed in terms of the comment period, and then we can adjust that as you see fit.
Well, we're doing the action session right after this meeting.
Okay.
It's the next session. It's going to immediately follow this discussion.
Great.
And
Mara, I'll send you an
rather
email.
than send a letter that says yellow or orange, I think we can let you know the results of that discussion immediately following the meeting. But I think we regardless of what we do, we feel we owe it to the public to allow public comment prior to that decision. And so but that will be today. So you'll hear
I
back from
appreciate
us
that,
today.
sir. So then we will pause on a letter then. That letter then might be put out on Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, if that's okay, because it is 4:15 on a Friday, and I want to make sure that Elle can log off of her computer at a decent time tonight. So
Fair enough.
Mara and Elle, I'll send you an email this evening sometime as to the outcome of the public discussion.
I would suggest it would be within 30 minutes of now.
well, thank you so much. I also just really want to commend the leadership of Dr. Ryan. LPHAs right now in our state have an incredibly challenging job, and you have a really phenomenal public health leader in Dr. Ryan. And so I just appreciate him and the work that he's doing in Clear Creek. I think that's one of the many reasons why Clear Creek has been able to move forward with ski plans and things of that nature. So I just really appreciate his leadership and really this ability to have an open and honest conversation with your county commissioners. Thank you so much. We appreciate this. The state wants to have your back. Even though when it feels like maybe we don't always have it, we want to have it. We want to be partners in this, and just really thank you. So.
And you tell your Dr. Ryan hello and thanks as well.
I will. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Mara and Elle.
And thanks, Mara, for saying that about Tim. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Tim, you've been in a tough job for a long time, and thank you.
Yep.
Most welcome, everyone.
So we're now moving into an action session in this meeting to discuss exactly what we said. We have, first thing I want to do is look at the comments that are in, and some of these we can go back through pretty quickly. One is talking about outside globes for heating or globes for being able to be outside and sanitization. There's a request from another restaurant owner, please give us time to adjust. Orange will take us from 65 to 35 indoors. Another one from another person, since we depend on the hospital bed counts from out of our community, how does this affect Clear Creek County? And that's an important other issue, which is going to be our access as the hospitals are filling right now. Now, as a member of the public, this seems consistent with what I've been hearing in commission meetings, our discussion, and a couple asking about the ski areas and how it will affect them and how soon, and a couple of comments that say orange is better sooner than later. And so what I'd like to do now is open this up to public comment. So if you can raise your hand on the participant, if you click on participants and see the window to the left and raise your hand, then you can be brought up, or you can simply type your comments into chat.
I just brought up over named Michaels. They had their hand up for quite a while.
I'll just state that I've got my eyes on the Facebook feed if people want to write comments there.
Okay, yeah. And you on the Facebook feed, George, is that what you said? Yeah, okay. So who's that we have? We have Michael's up. Can you unmute yourself to speak?
Hello, this is Michael Hosfer up in Georgetown. Thank you for having me on here. I do appreciate that. I was just driving over Squaw Pass this morning, and I saw that we still have numerous county road closures out there. Right at the height of the fires, I was out in Grand County, and I was going for hikes in southern Grand County at the full height of the fires out there. They didn't seem to need to shut so much stuff down out there. And I noticed we got the same type of conversation going on right now. And that's to shut things down, have closures, totally what this orange thing is going to be. And these are all control the population maneuvers, nothing to do with health, nothing to do with wildfires. I think this is getting way out of control and point of ridiculous. basically the type of problem that we're trying to solve is you have like a company and employees all get sick and the company might have to shut down for 2 weeks because employees are sick, can't work, and might lose 2 weeks of business. We're trying to solve this by having 2 to 3 years of shutting the business down. This is ridiculous, absolutely insane. Totally the cure is far worse than the problem. Mr. Marlin, you just brought up, you couldn't think of anything else to talk about. You're the economist on the board. I was fully expecting you to think of the economics on this situation. This is there's also a known thing about this, that in the pattern of these virus spreads, that it's like water. You can kind of contain it partially and for a while, but eventually it goes out and goes around. So no matter what policy any country in the world has, in the short run, they can make a difference. In the long run, it's all about the same. So whether you go to whatever color now or later or anytime, in the short run, that makes a difference. In the long run, no difference whatsoever. As far as it being like the slow season, well, think things are already fairly slow just from being a slow season. The tightening it even more is, really honestly tight. And then so when the busy season comes, it can be even bigger and more widespread and more out of control because you just allow it to happen all at once. Or then you have to shut down the busy season, which is totally an economic problem. So anyways, I'm suggesting that you probably just may not want to go to any higher colors. I think this is already onerous enough and greatly appreciate it if you did. Turn it back over to you, Mr. Willock.
Thanks. Craig.
Thanks for chiming me in. I know I said this during the chat, but it bears repeating. The logistics of moving from blue to orange for a business owner, especially a restaurant business owner, that in and of itself is onerous. The schedule for our property, Cabin Creek Brewing, is already out for next week. So we'll essentially be notifying staff that we're slashing our staffing in half beginning Monday, if we make that move. Whereas moving at least giving us a couple of days to move to orange logistically makes our life significantly simpler. And for the record, and it's unfortunate that the CDPHE folks are not still on. It bears noting that restaurants have borne the brunt of this color wheel or the COVID dial, and restaurants have not borne out to be the primary source of the outbreaks that have been seen statewide. They've been private gatherings, which is true in Clear Creek County as well in terms of our primary spike, and that by moving restaurants and bars to 25%, we're probably only going to exacerbate that issue. And we have not addressed that issue effectively. And I think any move to jump to positions on the dial should also include a move to address that specific issue.
Thanks, Craig. I saw another hand up a little bit ago, Mark C. Is that hand taken down?
Mayor Hillman had a hand up. I'm not sure.
Okay.
If he...
Oh, Mike, I see you there. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, commissioners, for having this meeting and Dr. Ryan being on here. I'll first speak from my mayor position and what this means for our community. We know our first and foremost thing is to keep people healthy and safe. With the spike that we have is very concerning for me as protecting our citizens of our community and what this is doing. I'm really concerned. I really never got the answer about how the hospital beds down in Lakewood that we had to use to justify what level we're at, and how fast are those beds filling up. That neighboring counties are going to affect us all anyway. Our economy has struggled. Idaho Springs, I would say, has done pretty decent through all of this. We just saw our sales tax numbers for September, and we were up, which was very surprising. But then I want to go, now I want to take off my mayor hat and put on my local business owner hat. Like Craig has said, and all of us, we know how this going to this 25% is going to affect us. The other thing that I can tell you from the beginning is people are not going to want to dine inside. Once as this continues to get worse, when people only have an option to sit inside, I think we're going to lose a lot of business that way. As a restaurant owner that's been affected by this, that's struggling heavily, I would have to say I would support going to the orange level, trying to stair step it from yellow to orange in a week or 2 weeks. I'm in a position that we need to nip this at the bud. We've already got our kids in the school, the high school and the middle school on remote learning. I think they've been told that they were going to go back on the 11th. I'm not convinced that that's going to happen on the 11th either. So, I feel that the safety and the health of this community, making sure that we don't lose anybody, and balancing that with making sure that our economy is stabilized somewhat. And I will agree with George that if we're going to do this, go back to orange, over the next several weeks, this is our very slow time. So the timing of this, I think, is probably, the time to do it instead of waiting until after Christmas, where the ski season really gets kicked in and travelers really start traveling. So this, as much as I hate to say, go back 2 levels, Craig, I'm sorry, but I think the orange level, and let's get it over with. Let's do it. Try to get past this so we can get reopened up to where we need to be. Thank you for listening to my comments.
Thanks, Mike. Do we have any other hands up right now? Anyone else? I don't see any. Thank you. Go ahead, George.
I received a text message from Mark Grable, owner of 4 businesses in Clear Creek County. He's supportive of being in orange. He's hoping that doing so will save our December.
Can I add a word here?
Please, Tim.
So I completely understand that the economic engine of Clear Creek County is really shouldering the majority of this impact, right? I want to keep kids in school and I want to keep businesses fully open. What's keeping that from those 2 realities from happening are people's personal choices in the community. I can't police people's personal actions. As much as I can put out guidance and recommendations, it's incumbent upon the people in the county to do the right thing. I wish I could corral all those people who aren't interested in following rules and regulations and holding them in a pin for a few months so that businesses could stay open and schools could stay open. But we don't live in a dictatorship, right? We live here in a democracy, so that's not reality. So it's finding a balance. And the sooner we nip, to use Mike's words, the sooner we nip this in the bud and try to get a handle on it, the sooner we can pop back out the other end and reopen businesses fully. Let me be clear, we're not interested in closing down businesses completely. There are ways to continue to operate a business, and particularly restaurants with takeout and things like that. We're talking about a 2-week period. What it's also going to take is not a color dial. Going from yellow to orange to purple or red, it doesn't really matter. What needs to happen is everyone on this call and everyone listening needs to reach out to everyone and demand of them action that is in line with what we're trying to accomplish as a community. Because if we don't have buy-in from everybody, it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter what you as business owners do. And it doesn't matter what the school district does. If we still have dozens of people who choose not to follow the rules and are really ruining it for everybody, it's incumbent upon all of us to really call them out and make it so that we can operate at full capacity as a county and remain healthy. That's really where we're at. I'm not interested in penalizing people or businesses. It's the last thing in the world I want to do. I want a vibrant economy, but the only way to get there is to have people follow the rules, and that's going to take everybody lending a hand and making sure that happens.
Thank you, Tim. I think one thing that's really important that comes out of this is we need peer group pressure in this county. From businesses to residents, from residents to businesses, when we see it. We have to keep that pressure on. Looking at the, and I'm not going to bother to bore everybody by sharing the screen again, but looking at what I see happening daily between the daily reported versus the daily onset versus the weekly reported and onset. And when you look off to the right side, when you're looking at onset because it hasn't been put in place yet, or when you're looking at the weekly, and you can look at those weeks that are sitting down that look like we're turning the corner, and every time it's shooting higher week by week. And we have got to take action both to keep people safe as well as to have an economy that can even be open at all. And if we don't act now during the slow season, then we have little hope of being able to control it during high season. When I hear that the skiers are going to be open, and we know that, you know, when they operate at full capacity, we're looking at somewhere in the vicinity of 40,000 vehicles in a day back and forth. And that translates during peak period to 2.8 person occupancy, which is recorded. We're looking at somewhere around 150,000 people flowing through us. Not all of them stop here, the majority don't, but enough do. And enough stop at everything from gas stations to everywhere else. And they are the lifeblood of the economy, but they're also the way we're being transmitted to at this time. We've got to get this under control, in my opinion. I'm going to support, you know, our choices between moving to orange on Wednesday or moving to orange by the following Monday. And I can say that I am I'm going to support moving to orange that few days sooner rather than later. And Tim, I would like you to, I mean, I know you said you get an email out. If you've got their phone number, you give them a call and tell them to send a letter if in fact the vote turns out the way I'll expect it to.
Yeah.
A question, Tim. I think Craig, I believe it was, raises a good point. Well, before I go to that, who would be affected by orange? Bars, restaurants, who else? Would the rec center be closed? I mean, could you sort of like paint for everyone on the call what that means?
Good question.
In a nutshell, nobody would be closed. Orange is not to stay at home. Orange is just a more restrictive version of yellow and blue, or 2 and 1. What it would do is significantly reduce restaurant capacity down to 25%. Indoor activities at the gym would cease. Would it mean you couldn't go to the gym? No, it would mean any sort of group activity at the gym would not be allowed. Basketball, things like that nature, where people are close together, et cetera. So going to orange is really about just a reduction in the numbers in any one facility. Primarily, to Craig's point and others, it most impacts restaurants just from a sheer number perspective, how many people can be in there during that time. And all of that info is on the CDPHE website on their dial in terms of the business and how it relates to the numbers.
Yeah. One thing I'm looking at this like the engineer that I still am, and recognizing that Clear Creek is 9,000 people out of 6 million people in the state of Colorado. So whatever policies we do or don't do here are going to have almost no impact on things at a state level. And in as much as we're so affected by the transmission, which sounds like isn't happening in our community by and large, it's happening from people coming in from the outside, us going out to work, etc. And it sounds like the community spread is not happening at the bars and the restaurants either. So going to orange might make us feel good, but I would say based on what I just pointed out, it's probably not going to have a drastic impact on what our numbers are. Even going from yellow to blue, I think I could make that same argument based on the data that I just suggested. And I think Craig brought up a good point about And this kind of goes back to why I asked the questions about Jeffco and Summit. And I was like pretty much 100% sure that they didn't get 10 minutes notice to do this. And I'm still a little bit hot under the collar about how they did that with us. But I'm not opposed to going to Orange, even though I mentioned I have questions in my own mind about the effectiveness of doing that. I want to give business owners a little bit of time to be able to give people the courtesy of helping them adjust their plans. So I would be more in favor, based on all of that, in accepting the state's direction to go to yellow, and then talking about this again on Tuesday and maybe again next Friday. And I'm not opposed to doing the orange. I think doing it based on almost no notice for anybody is hasty, and it's not going to make a big difference, in my opinion.
So I share some of those concerns, and I think as we talk about the implementation date, I don't see much of a difference between an implementation date of Wednesday and an implementation date of Friday. Although I'm willing to be persuaded, not this Friday, next Friday. What was that, Randy?
I don't think that's what they said. I think they said if we go to yellow, we'd go Monday. If we go to orange, we would go Wednesday. But if we go to yellow, they would anticipate having us go to orange by the following Monday, which would be a week after this. So we'd go to yellow on Monday and orange the following Monday, is I think what they said. You just said Friday. That's what I heard. Now, these
yeah,
are
I did say Friday. I said Friday because I was suggesting Friday.
Mhm.
And the reason I was suggesting Friday is because I think that gives businesses more time to adjust. And I think that's reasonable. And when I think about what's happening in our communities on Wednesday versus Friday evening, I'm not sure there's much of a difference between those two decisions. Although I'm willing to be persuaded. If Tim, you think that there is, then by all means.
Here's a bit of reality. The state's decision is going to be based on what's already done, meaning all the people we tested this week, and we're going to get the test results back in literally the next 2 to 3 days, is what's really going to drive the state's decision. To date, we've had 5 cases in the last 5 days. If we have a number of cases over the coming 3-4 days, that's what's going to be driving the state's decision. I imagine if I call Mara and say, hey, Mara, we're hesitant to move instantly to orange. Can you give us a little more time, maybe next Friday, and just forego everything until then, but give us at least a week's time to get our ducks in a row and get everyone on the same page. I'm sure she would be amenable to that. Yeah, I mean, my conversations to date have been with them of, your numbers are this, your numbers are that. Yes, what about next week? Let's see. And so I've been telling this group for probably 2 weeks now that this conversation was coming, that our numbers were what they were, and the state was probably going to move us from level 1 to level 2. So it shouldn't be a shock to anyone that we're having this conversation today.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
So I think moving to orange, I think giving people time and businesses time, I understand that completely. And I don't think we should pull the trigger tomorrow. I think giving people time to adjust to it and understand how to make, I don't think it's as simple as shuffling tables around. I think it's more complex than that. And I appreciate that, of how do we get more takeout orders, or how do we bolster our business in that 2-week period while we're at a reduced rate or a reduced occupancy sort of thing, conversation. So I'm all for time, but time is not on our side, unfortunately, for this. The longer we wait, the longer we might be in it, right? Because we're now pushing now into Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving from anyone that I've spoken to, their opinion and mine is too, is Thanksgiving is going to result in an even greater spike in what we're seeing now, for all the reasons I've discussed, and happy to if you weren't there. It's tens of thousands of small gatherings of family and friends all over the state and the country, and that's going to drive our numbers even higher. So the sooner we can get a handle on this, the better.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And so what I'm not proposing is that we put a decision off. I actually think that that would be to inflict the same wound on the business community that we're trying to avoid inflicting right now, which is a lack of notice, right? And so what I'm proposing is that we decide now. I'm in support of deciding to move to orange now, and a little bit more comfortable with that being implemented, say, 8 a.m. on Friday than 8 a.m. on Wednesday.
Right, with the understanding that businesses are moving towards that actively over that week. It isn't just something that magically happens on Friday. One other thing I might add, as business owners and all the ones on this call, you should feel empowered to go into other businesses that are not following the rules and explain to them as a business the importance of everybody following and being on the same page, right? All of your economics are tied together. It's not like you're an island of a restaurant here or a restaurant there. The economics are all tied together. If you have several restaurants or facilities or businesses in the community who aren't following the rules, they're likely driving the numbers are impacting your business. So please go talk to, in a very friendly way, your fellow business owners and explain the economics of it and how wearing a mask and following the mandates is to their benefit from an economics perspective. They don't listen to me when I go in.
I would say in the business owner's defense, and to Craig's point, that conversation should be had with your neighbors, right? And your family members who are ignoring the hazards and who are having private gatherings and throwing caution to the wind, because that's where this is happening, right? I think by and large, our business owners are being very responsible, and they're not the ones who are to blame for what's happening.
No, not at all, Sean. And I wasn't suggesting that. There are
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting you were. I wasn't coming at you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's the problem, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. And there are a handful of businesses, though, who have no regard for what's going on at all. But having said that, I'm impressed at the rumor mill in Clear Creek County. It's second to none in all of my life experiences. And given that, I find it really hard to believe that you can't feed something into that rumor mill that sticks with people, that changes their fundamental behavior, because it's so powerful from what I've seen. I mean, I get word of things before I get word of things. You know what I mean? And it's a powerful tool that I think has not yet been used in a positive way in this scenario.
I think, first of all, I don't think it's fair to blame the residents instead of the businesses or the businesses instead of the residents. The problem is COVID. It's a global pandemic. It isn't just because people are doing things wrong. It's at the level at which we are calibrating behavior and the level at which behavior is responding to that calibration attempt is greater than will suppress and flatten the curve to maintain the access to enough healthcare to take care of people as we inevitably become sick. And to point out, I mean, I think we should be enforcing at the business level, and I think we should be enforcing at the personal level. I would also point out that some of these personal gatherings took place in businesses, and there are businesses that didn't and now will perform better as a result. But even when we perform at a certain level, if we're at the blue level, even rigidly adhered to by well-meaning businesses doing everything they're supposed to do, is not suppressing the curve. And we have our best guesses as to where people got sick. And I don't think we always know, because there's a lot of mingling and a lot of moving around that's happening. So I think that, again, I think it comes down to about, do we do it in 5 days or do we do it in 7 days? And if we do it or do we do it in 3 days at a yellow level and then another 7 days at a orange level? And I think at some point we need to reach for the break. And it's not because I'm not incredibly sensitive to businesses who see giant changes in the economy or in pandemics and biology and don't suffer because of them. I've seen that myself and experienced it. So I'm extremely sympathetic to it. But we're in a situation where we do have to take some actions that are going to make a difference sooner than later. And when we would hopefully then be able to operate at a better level later on, because we got it back down, when the market is going to be there to make the biggest difference for us. So yeah. I'm not going to fall on a sword over 2 days one way or the other either. But I want to make it clear that it's not about guilt and shame for almost anybody out there. It's just about people are getting sick because there's something going on biologically that we have very little control over.
Well, I'll push back on that a tiny bit, right? There are societies out there that aren't North Korea that are dealing with us a lot better than we are because of the social contract that one neighbor has with another and their culture. So I think our culture bears some responsibility for what's going on. And then not to put you on the spot, Cass Patton, but I noticed you've sent a lot of messages on the chat line. I would invite you to join this dialogue and summarize what you had to say if you're interested in doing that.
Hi, thanks for having me. I apologize, I have my kindergartner here today, so things are a little bit wild on my end. But you know, I don't envy your positions. I know you have to make a lot of hard decisions. You know, I've spoken with several business owners that feel like they would have to shutter their business if they have to go back to 25% capacity. There is no real benefit for them to do to go and take out orders only, that they won't be able to keep their employees, and they'd have to just kind of go back to, you know, where we were in the very beginning of all of this. And you know, so from my perspective, I'm trying to get the answers of how to take everything into consideration, you know, whether it's the ski areas or Christmas market or, you know, the various opportunities that we have coming up, to try to see if, for instance, I guess part of me is, you know, they want to move us to orange, and then in order to move back to blue, then we have to go, you know, 2 weeks and then move back to yellow, and then 2 weeks move back to orange, I mean, back to blue, sorry. And I'm just wondering if, you know, we're in a position where we can just move to yellow, why we can't, you know, see what our numbers are in 2 weeks, if that's kind of how they run the program. And then after that, move to the orange, you know, in the same way that they're going to make us go back the other direction. But I agree with you. I think that the timing on this is difficult. I mean, I've had, you know, rumors coming at me that the state was going to close on Friday. Obviously, those were rumors, but the state's looking at the counties to make the decisions, and agree with you wholeheartedly that that's probably not the best decision from the top down. But I appreciate you just bringing me on to share some of these thoughts. And again, my concern is also for the business owners. And yes, of course, always first the safety of the people involved. But also when you talk about the people involved, you need to talk about, you know, jobs and livelihoods and, you know, the children and the parents and, you know, all involved, and not just, you know, moving to a color because the state is recommending that. And I think I applaud you guys in really weighing out all of these hard decisions. Thank you.
Thanks, Cass.
Cass, if I might address the sort of the color thing. So as the state suggested, they're going to move us to yellow whether we want to or not. It's not up for debate. And they would move us to orange because our numbers have now for 3 weeks. Normally it's a 2-week period. So going from blue to yellow, they're looking at 2-week numbers. They've been quite busy, and that's why we got sort of the 3-week window, but they've continued to rise, which is why they're seeing the slide down basically the other side, which is why they said, although you might be going to yellow today or Monday, we're likely to move you to orange, because if the test results we get back in the coming days suggest that, that's where they're going to go. That it's no longer our decision as a community. This is the state's decision, ironically, even though they're giving us full control over what we do. But that's sort of a foregone conclusion if the results we get back this weekend suggest they do that. None of the people on this call are really going to be making that decision at that point. So my argument is the sooner we go to that, and I understand the economics of it completely, I do. But the sooner we go to orange, the sooner we can get out of orange. And I think if we go for 2 weeks with next to no cases, I can call Mara up and make a really good argument about why we should go back to blue, right? I think I can do that. If the numbers show me or I can show her with the numbers that we deserve to be back in blue. We sort of righted the ship. We could potentially come out of the orange in a 2-week, literally a 2-week period. But that's going to require an all hands on deck, a broad community-wide effort to make that happen. So I can't get pictures of massive parties or texts of this happened or that happened, because that sort of stuff is like a rod through the wheel as you're riding your bike down the street. And that's just, that derails us.
Yeah,
Actually saying that, I was just say, I was wondering, like, how do you get the genie back in the bottle? And hearing that you're very data oriented and excited about going back to blue if the numbers warrant it, is good to hear. Sorry, George.
Oh yeah, yes. If our numbers are, if we have 0 cases in a week or 1 or 2 cases in a week and for several weeks, I think I have a very strong argument to them, right? They're very, very data driven as well. If our numbers suggest that we should be at blue, I would force them to give me reason and cause for why we wouldn't be at that blue level.
Randy, now we're waiting for each other. Go ahead.
it's okay. No, please.
Okay.
I don't think I was going to say anything very intelligent at that moment anyway. So go ahead.
Well, no pressure, huh? Okay, so I think as I'm conceiving this, really what we're doing is we're swapping a November weekend at 25% for a December weekend at 25%, hopefully. And I support that. And I think I want to address this conversation about whose fault it is. And I agree, Randy, and I want to thank you for trying not to have this be framed in whose fault it is. And I don't think that moving restaurants to 25%, for example, is a response to the fact that it is necessarily a response to, what am I trying to say here? Is based on evidence that this is happening in restaurants. What we're doing is there are too many cases around right now. When there are too many cases around right now, everything just has to tighten up. We had businesses operating in the same way from June through maybe next Friday. We never had any community spread. We got community spread in one weekend because of some businesses whose practices were probably like that all summer long. And so what's the difference between us landing the right heads on the dice to get community spread that weekend? It's that the general level of cases is rising. And when the general level of cases is rising, everybody has to be more careful everywhere. And so that's why I support this. That's what this isn't about, whose fault it is or what risk do we have to control where. It's about, we have to try our best to control every risk everywhere when 1 in 100 Coloradans is sick.
Yes, I think what it comes down to is there's a greater permeation of the disease itself into our population at this time. So it's just like going to Vegas or anywhere else and rolling the dice or spinning the roulette wheel. There are fewer and fewer numbers on that roulette wheel because it's no longer 1 in 200 or 1 in 300. It's becoming 1 in 100 and 1 in 50 that have it. And so you just need fewer, we're needing right now fewer and fewer contacts with other people to roll snake eyes and come up with the disease. And so there's a greater likelihood for everywhere, almost everywhere they go. And so those places where we have the greatest concentrations of people are the places it's most likely to happen. And especially with aerosolization, our breath within the room that's confined within the room during the winter months. So the whole thing, the game is changing. And this is really adaptive management of using probability rather than trying to pick a point and say, well, that's where it's happening. Because any gathering is where it's happening, whether it's in someone's home or in a restaurant or in a bar or in a gas station or a convenience store or the grocery store, any of those places. And so to try to control ourselves and our behavior and our neighbors and friends' behavior through peer group pressure, and then trying to put something in place that says, here's how many people you can put in a building, is really the issue. That's how I see it after having listened to Tim and tried to get a little smarter about this over time. It's not a personal issue. It's not political. It's not blame. It's mathematics and biology coming together, and we just have to manage it properly.
Could not have said it better myself, Randy.
The only thing I would add to that, I think it's not quite that simple. And an example is, from what I've heard, there are either none or extremely few documented cases of spread happening on commercial aircraft. So some places are safer than others, right? I think we need to take a nuanced approach and focus the pain that we're dealing out, if you want to look at it that way, in the areas that are actually going to make our community safer rather than painting it with such a broad brush.
I think the tools that you have available to you can be narrow when the problem is smaller. When the problem is larger, you got to start plugging more holes. But what I don't want to do is, I feel like we're talking a little bit circularly right now.
Right.
I think I know with regards to the decision where I'm at. I would prefer that we have an implementation date of Friday, and I think it's smart for us to move to Orange.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I guess one thing, you talk about what tools we have available. Tim characterized it as the rumor mill, or social pressure, however you want to look at that. I think there's opportunities there when it comes to public education and answering people's questions about what's really going on. Because I mentioned this to Tim when we were talking this morning. Some friends of mine, associates of mine, have been doing these gatherings, and they've been doing them all summer in a fairly responsible way. And a few weeks ago, I kind of said, it's probably time to shut all that down, and no one listened to me. Surprising. But since then, I'm hearing from a lot of those people, well, you know what? My friend who's a nurse actually got exposed, and I had dinner with her at my house last night. So I think the spread's grown to a point where people don't have to look too far in any direction to see someone they know, or to see an actual empirical data that supports what we've been talking about for a long time. And this is a sidebar, but I would love to figure out ways that we can continue to encourage people to do the right thing, and arming them with knowledge about the things that they should or shouldn't do. And the other thing too, I think, is a time that I really liked was the time bound thing. Like, let's just pull together and suck it up for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or some number that's not like you're going back into your basement for the rest of foreseeable future. So that's the only thing I had to add to that.
Do I have a motion of any kind?
I'm not sure, what kind of action are we taking here? Are we directing staff to write a letter? What does this look like, Bob?
I think you're directing staff, specifically directing Dr. Ryan to write a letter to CDPHE expressing the level that we accept going to and the timing.
Okay, so thank you, Bob, for helping me understand that. I move that we direct Dr. Tim Ryan to send a communication to CDPHE expressing that we agree we should move to Orange, and our preferential date of implementation is Friday. Maybe we could say Friday at 6 a.m.
The 13th.
Second.
I would have preferred to direct Dr. Ryan to use his professional, empirical, educated judgment to do the right thing.
Dr. Ryan,
that's a motion I would have made. Just want to let you know.
Well, I'll push back on that too, because I think this is this has a large political element to it, and that's not Dr. Ryan's job.
Well, I agree that I'm not trying to be cowardly. I'm just trying to say that we should go with the best evidence and the best advice we have with a professional rather than layman.
How about this? How about I give you my opinion and you, as the politicians, make that decision?
Okay.
Yeah, so what is your opinion? Do you have a problem with the Friday morning implementation date? Or, I don't mean to frame it like that. What's your preferred implementation date?
I don't. I was the one who suggested it. Hey, Beth, I'm so glad that we taped these things, because I would like everyone to review 2 to 3 weeks ago, and what I was suggesting is going to happen, and here we are. I think Friday at 6 a.m. or 8 a.m., it doesn't really matter. I think giving the businesses, more importantly, that time to plan and make adjustments is what they've asked for. That's what I heard. And I think this does that. I can't guarantee that CDPHE is going to come back and say, okay, you have Friday at 6 and not Wednesday at 8. I can't guarantee that. Obviously, I can reach out to Mara and express strongly our desire and what we want to do and why, more importantly, we want to do that. I think going to Orange, as I've suggested through this whole call, the sooner we can do that and sort of not lock down everything, but tighten everything up for a 2 to 3 week period and really get this under control in our community. And I will, in addition, I will reach out to my peers in Jefferson County and in Summit County to get a handle on what they're doing and how it might mesh and interact with what we're doing in a hopefully positive way. But my suggestion would be to go to Orange next week and sort of get that done and move on and figure out how we move forward through this thing.
Okay, then my motion stands. Thank you.
Yep, and it's already been seconded, so I think we
Was
did.
it? I didn't hear your second, Sean, sorry. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't know that I want to jump into this, except just to express that I am interested in additional measures that can be taken perhaps on Tuesday. We know a lot of local governments have done a lot of stuff, and I'm interested in doing more than only addressing really the business side of this.
And I'm interested in having Dr. Ryan get with his counterparts in our surrounding counties and advising us on what those kind of things might be at the earliest time that he can fit it within his bandwidth.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to what you're talking about, George, although I kind of view Clear Creek as the fly on the elephant's back. And I think we're kind of doomed to the trajectory of what our neighbors are doing. And I wouldn't want to implement measures that didn't make a difference for our outcome.
Yeah, and I think having conversations with Jefferson and Summit in particular, the elephant, if you will, and really finding out what they have sort of implemented and why it didn't work and what they're thinking about, more importantly, what they're thinking about is sort of that next level of what they might do. Because doing what they're doing now, if it isn't working, makes zero sense. And trying to understand what it is they're planning to do next, I think would be more informative for our purposes.
Okay.
Notice Craig's got his hand up again.
He's on the.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. And for some reason, I can't just put it in the chat. So when would we move to yellow, Dr. Ryan? That's the only piece I'm missing.
It wouldn't be yellow, it's orange on Friday.
No, I know, but are we just going straight to orange on Friday? I thought CDPHE indicated that they were going to move us to yellow before that.
That's a great question, Craig, and I'll talk to Mara about that. I think if I called her and said we'll move to orange, we very well may forego yellow over the coming week or 5 days, and just go to orange on Friday and continue on as we are. But again, as a businesses, I would take that time to move yourself to orange over that time, so it isn't something suddenly Friday at 6 a.m. and you're trying to implement everything that we've been talking about for a week.
Oh, we will, but that was my point exactly. Thank you. It's going to take us a week to do a good job of moving to orange. We could have moved to orange on Wednesday and it wouldn't have been orange. So thank you for hearing.
I think one thing to be clear too, and because Craig asked a really good question, is there are 2 or 3 things that could happen when Tim calls and talks to them to find out what the answer is, because our businesses, it's Friday now. Our businesses need to know really quickly if they're going to yellow on Monday. And so we kind of have to, because if we say we want to go to orange, what they said was you can stay in blue until yellow on Monday or orange on Wednesday. If now the answer is, well, if you're going to go to orange on Friday, you need to go to yellow on Monday, then somebody needs that answer pretty quickly so that they can inform their staff and move the tables,
Well, the longer I'm on this call, it's delaying my call with the head of the superintendent of the schools and the principal of the high school. And then after that, I'll call Mara and have that discussion, and I will let this broader group know. Hopefully she answers my call because it is Friday at 5 o'clock in terms of what that looks like. So as soon as I know, I will let this broader group know what her verdict is, if you will, and let everybody know.
And we'll get that on the website.
Yeah, we'll put it out on
What's
Facebook.
happening on what day?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay.
And commissioners, one thing that I'd like to throw out there, one, thank you for your decision on going to the Orange next Friday. But also the city of Idaho Springs identifies how serious this is. We are in the motion of conducting our own ordinance and upping our enforcement to help out the county. We know that your bandwidth to try to enforce all this. So we felt that to be good stewards of our community, that we would up our enforcement and start checking our own businesses and really stay on top of it. So we're here to be a partner with you guys and the county health, and anything else we can do as a city to help out, let us know.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, with that said, I think we've concluded this session. And we have some executive session items to go into. And so I move that we move into executive session for the following purposes. Bob?
Discussion of personnel matters, but not regarding commissioners or elected officials, or to discussions of personnel policies generally pursuant to 24-6-402 sub 4 sub F.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We will not be coming back into open session, and so for archival purposes, I'm stating that we have concluded our executive session and no written minutes were kept of that session. We will move into executive session now, and no written minutes will be kept of that session. I think I said those backwards, but in any case, see you over on the other side.
And thanks to everyone who participated in this dialogue. I know this was kind of on short notice. I was really pleased with the amount of attendance. So thanks for
Yeah, it was great.
Thanks, everybody.